name is Monica Kretschmer, and I'm the founder and CEO of the Universal Women's Network, Women of Inspiration Awards, and this is the Woman Driving Change panel, where we speak with women from diverse industries who are making impact locally, nationally, and globally. So I'm here with three super successful women from very diverse industries today, and it's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Suhayya Abu-Hakima, who is the CEO of Alstari Corporation. We have Sarah Haako, is the founding partner of Haako Peters and Associates, and also Cara Kenish, who is the owner-operator at Tim Hortons Canada. So welcome, ladies. I'm looking forward to an excellent dialogue today on the Woman Driving Change panel. But before we begin, I just want to congratulate all of you. Of course, you're part of the Woman of Inspiration, Woman Driving Change book. In its glory, 332 pages where you share your stories of wisdom and leadership. And I can't tell you how proud I am to be walking beside each of you on this journey.
Thank you.
Congratulations. All right, so now we have some important questions to this panel, but before we begin, Dr. Sue, I will just have you share a little bit about yourself with our listeners today.
Sure. I'm a technology entrepreneur. I've been an entrepreneur now for 20 years. I've co-founded and started 3 tech startups in AI and exited 2 successfully, and Alstari is my 3rd one, which is focused on AI and security. A few things that are interesting is that typically, women don't get funded in these startups. We face brick ceilings, not glass ones. Secondly, we've been super innovative in my companies. I have both a master's and PhD in AI, and we're able to leverage that. And we filed something like 48 international patents, and over, I think we have about 40 trademarks that are international as well. And that's helped propel our business. And the areas that last exit was actually in public safety and security. So these aren't just sort of fluff pieces that we've been doing in tech. I think it's been hard tech and really hard won. So I'm very proud of that. I'm also a mom. I have 2 children, a boy and a girl. They're both STEM kids. And of course, I couldn't be as successful as I am without my family. So from my perspective, my husband, my children, and then my extended family have been phenomenal.
Beautiful. Well, we're so happy to have you. And I know that I've said this in the green room, but you are truly a unicorn. And I'm so happy to have you share your wisdom and your experience with our panel and as well as our guest today. So thank you, Sue. And Sarah, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Sure. My name's Sarah Haako, and I'm one of the founding partners of Haako Peters. I have a support her as my partner at our firm. I'm a chartered accountant, a chartered insolvency and restructuring professional. I have a master's in law, in banking and finance, and a couple other designations. For the most part, I work with companies and individuals in a distressed state, whether it's an insolvency situation or a high growth trajectory. I have 2 girls who are national and one world champion in kickboxing and karate, who is trained by a fellow woman of inspiration, Ms. Megan Cotterill. And I teach group fitness on the side. I teach bar and aerobics many, many times a week, which is the benefit of owning one's own company, that I can just pop out and do that. And whether it's in business or fitness or through my vegan clothing company, the driving force is really about community and helping others rise up to the best of their ability and just feel good and be their best selves, whatever that looks like for them.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Sarah. And I think you missed 2019 Woman of Inspiration
Yes, I did.
Award.
Yes. And I am on the Universal Women's Network National Ambassador Committee. And I am newly appointed to joining the Universal Women's Network Nest Foundation as their treasurer, because I'm an accountant and a single mom. So there you go.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Sarah. And Cara.
So I'm Cara Kenish, and I'm a third-generation Tim Hortons franchisee from Hamilton, Ontario. My grandparents actually owned the second Tim Hortons ever, so quite the legacy behind me. I'm here pretty much to use my voice, my platform to make a difference in our communities and to both locally and internationally. I am a huge athlete, uber competitive, it kind of runs my blood. I have 6 national titles in judo. I play competitive ice hockey. I run Around the Bay, which is our 30K in Hamilton. It's an annual race, I guess, but I'm also training to climb Mount Everest, which was rescheduled from 2020 to fingers crossed for next year in support of our Tim Hortons Foundation camps. So we're raising money for that. And I guess I'm also a UWN ambassador and contributor. So yeah, super proud to be a part of this.
Well, we are super proud to have all of you walking on this journey beside us. And, you know, I'm going to jump right into our panel questions today, ladies, because I'm looking forward to your experience and your expertise. Sue, we talk about breaking the glass ceiling, and I think you mentioned that it's more of a brick ceiling, and I do have to say, since you've pointed that out, I always refer to it as a brick ceiling because it truly is. And it really is. We've come so far, but that's not enough. And so tell us how you believe that we can drive change and raise the bar for all women.
Yeah, so it's very exciting to sort of, you don't get a lot of perspective as an entrepreneur and as a tech entrepreneur about what you've done on your journey until you get people like the Universal Women Network coming up to you and saying, hey, what's this all about? And then asking you all those phenomenal questions and then getting you to actually explain yourself in that wonderful book, which I'm very proud to be a part of. I have to say that mentors in my life, I would say early mentors would, of course, be my father, who was a professor of history, if you can believe it, my brother, who is a Silicon Valley entrepreneur, God rest his soul now, and of course, various people along my journey. Like all my boards of directors have included men, my boards of advisors. I've had countless mentors throughout my career in tech that are male, just because there's not a lot of women around. It's like 1 out of 50 in every room, or even less than that. And I have to also say that the acquisition teams for both my tech startups we're all men. So from that perspective, it's been very, very interesting journey for me as a woman to not pay attention to that. And I have to say that one of the things that I found really surprising when people were sort of questioning me from the get-go about going into tech and doing a startup and all this good stuff is I honestly was brought up by a very powerful woman, archaeologist, Middle Eastern archaeology, that used to go out on digs in the Sahara with her students. And her view was that essentially you cannot look at yourself as less equal than anybody else. And so when I started off as an entrepreneur, I actually never thought of myself as a woman. I just thought of myself as a tech entrepreneur. And I didn't know, now I know, but I didn't know at that time what I didn't know. And hence, maybe it was naive, but I didn't know that I shouldn't be able to do what I achieved. And I think the bravery came from that. So I would recommend, and I would tell a lot of my women colleagues and counterparts, whether they're in tech or as entrepreneurs, just don't be afraid. And you know, it's okay. There are a lot of men that support us. There's a lot that have supported me throughout my career. I'd say hundreds. And it's okay to take that help and then to also extend it forward to other men and women. So my goal in life is to get as many people in STEM as I can, so science, technology, engineering, and math, kids from either gender, because we have such a shortage in this country. And once they get into these fields, they have a job for life, and a well-paying job for life. So from that perspective, I think it's a really interesting time to sort of take a minute back and to reflect against all the scars and the brick ceilings that you have to sort of have jackhammers to try and get through. But at the end of the day, you know, when you are successful people get blown away because at first they decide, oh, she's never going to succeed. Even, I have to say when I decided to do my PhD in AI, people said to me, oh, that's a bad idea. It'll never work. And then when it worked, it was, oh, cool, it did work. And it's like, oh my God, because it's so much easier to bet against women and against us than to sort of say they can do it. Of course they can achieve it. They have brains. They're very intelligent. They can get this done. And they're very determined. So that would be my lesson from, hopefully I answered it slightly, but from sort of the perseverance that I took and the many teams. My tech teams are mostly women. In my last company, I did get to 50% women and 50% male. But it's been a real battle to keep that kind of mix around in terms of tech companies. It's very, very hard. You have to go out and be deliberate in terms of your hiring strategies, but we did do that.
Beautiful. So including men to the conversation to help and support women is super, super important. I agree, to drive that change that does raise the bar for all women. So I agree. Perfect. Thank you so much, Dr. Sue. Sarah, we've come so far, but how are we going to break that brick ceiling?
I think that we break the brick ceiling by keeping on showing up and not being loud in an offensive way, but saying yes, right? So saying yes to the opportunity and not being afraid to stand your ground, right? So I've spoken across the country, not to the extent as Dr. Sue. I'm sure I'm usually talking about case law and the like, but quite often I am the only woman on the panel. I am almost always the only woman in the boardroom, which many of us are facing daily. So it ties in a bit to, or maybe a lot to, the theory of imposter syndrome, which seems to afflict women and not men. But I felt reborn at 40 for any number of reasons, but I was finally able to shed, now I'm kissing 50, but now I'm able to shed the imposter syndrome. I have earned all of the letters behind my name. I have earned the scars and the bruises. I've made some epic mistakes that I will own, and that's how we do it. So we just keep showing up, and maybe we need to be more proactive in, writing, submitting the papers, saying yes to the opportunities, saying yes in my situation to some big clients where I'm like, did they call the right person? So instead of my inclination to refer it out and say, well, yeah, I can do it, but so-and-so would be better. I'm like, no, I am better and best for situation X. And just, I'm not a fan of the saying fake it till you make it, because in my line of work, I better not fake anything. Like, I need to have paper to support anything that comes out of my mouth or gets put into a report. But we need to do the work and not second guess ourselves. We know what we know. We are experts in our field, whatever that field is, right? I don't care what your expertise is. We all add value. So step in, and while we're stepping into that spotlight, I've said a million times, Monica, as you know, stick your elbows out and make some space for others, right? There's no cap at the top. There's space for everyone, and there's a role for everyone. So recognize the value in others, ask questions out of curiosity, sit on different sides of the fence, but be curious about other people's opinions. Be curious about why someone disagrees with you, not confrontational. I don't know what I don't know. So I'm on a constant mission to learn and to be better. And I want to help others to the best of my ability within my wheelhouse to help them be better. So no to the imposter syndrome. I'm over it.
Love it, Sarah. You definitely do lead by example on all of those areas, and you know, I've got so many nuggets of wisdom chopped into that. So I'm really excited to go through this again, because the beauty is that people can pause, rewind, pause, rewind. There's going to be so many great lessons that are shared. And so I am really excited for that, to empower our future leaders, but also to empower our peers, right? And give them the confidence and hand behind the back that they need to help push them forward. So thank you so much, Sarah. Cara.
So imposter syndrome, that's something that I truly don't think I face very often. I think I'm fortunate to say that I was always raised and brought up and surrounded by people that believed in me and supported me in everything we did. I can see very much how we feel the need to step up, and we can feel that. But yeah, I don't have a lot to say really. I want to mimic actually a lot of what both of you, Sue and Sarah, have said, that, you know, make that space, and, you know, there's room for everyone. But I suppose one of the things that I fall back on quite often, people ask me what I want to do when I get to the top. And I feel very fortunate that I feel I'm up there pretty often, but I want to turn around and help everyone else reach that space as well.
Beautiful. So driving the change is not, is claiming that space, but not closing it off. It's opening the bar for everybody to join. And that's such a beautiful thing that I think every single leader has the, not just the ability, but I believe it's our responsibility is to do that, right? Once we achieve it, help it up, pay it forward, slingshot those women, pass the baton. It's so powerful. So thank you very much. Our next, you know, you're all, you know, such accomplished women, but every woman has a story. Each of you has their own story. Why is it so important for women to know their worth, how to negotiate for what they want, and how to advocate for themselves, Sue?
So that's an absolutely brilliant question. And the reason that it's brilliant is one of the best lessons that I've learned out of being an entrepreneur and an innovator is you typically have an idea. You create something out of nothing, and then you have to price it, right? And I've always been dead fast against this give it away for free stuff, because you give it away for free, you never make a profit. How do you feed your children, and how do you, you know, hire all these people and pay them in tax if you give it all away for free? And so one of the things that I've learned as a lesson, and I think that I learned this very, very early, and it may have been because of the trajectory of my career where I started, you know, in R&D labs in telecom, then I went to the Government of Canada, which, by the way, has no bottom line, so you can't, you know, it's a different story. We won't get into that discussion today. And then I went into private sector where you have to pay your own way and make your own money. So one of the things that I learned early on was how to value whatever it is that our teams create, and how to sell it, and how to make money out of it, and how to convince customers that they really need this stuff, right? And to build things that the customers really need. And for you to do that, you have to talk to the customers. I mean, that's the lessons that I learned listening to various entrepreneurs and working through it myself with customers. Customers are the best first testers of anything that you have an idea on, even before you build it or before you create the process or the idea. Go talk to a customer who could potentially be your target and say, this is what I'm thinking of doing, what do you think? And the customer is likely to say, well, that's a pile of garbage, or actually that could be something that we would pay for. And then you start working your way through that. So I'd say a couple of really smart things that I've done throughout my career is never to undervalue what we create as a team, and never to undervalue the results of what we do, so our companies. And so there's beautiful stories. I won't name the actual companies, but early days in my first startup, we took our capability that was doing automatic analysis of content of email, and we're talking about early, like around 2000, 1999, 2000, one of the biggest messaging companies in the world, and we took it to them and we said, this is what we created, isn't it fantastic? Why don't you license it from us? And they said to us, no, just give it to us for free and you get free marketing, right? And we said, forget it, take a hike. And so we laughed, and then we proceeded to go and work really hard for the next, 4 or 5 years to actually get more customers, and then we got bought out. So one of the it's very tempting early days to undervalue what you create and to give it away for free and not to pay yourself as an entrepreneur because it's, you're thinking I'm doing this for love. And so those are the lessons that you learn. And I had several people along the way, generally a lot of men and a lot of, I read a lot of the books by like Stephen Covey and other people like that were, trying to get you across the chasm, if you will. And, they always say you have to pay yourself as an entrepreneur. And you also, the thing I learned is never undervalue what you create. So that's extremely important. Now, as women, it's a different story. So we tend to minimize ourselves. Why? Because society has minimized us. So I think for me, it's a mixture of the way I was brought up by very accomplished people, but also because of the fact that my mother had 5 girls and 1 boy, and she didn't want the girls to be left behind or become underprivileged. So she brought us all up the same way. So she always drilled it into us from a very early age. You can do anything that your brother can do. And as a matter of fact, you're smarter than your brother. So, so I think that really helped us in spades. So I would say to women, don't undervalue yourselves. Don't let other people tell you, no, you can't do it. No, you're not significant enough. Oh, you're just pretty, you're a dummy. All that kind of stuff. It drives me nuts. And so if I ever come across friends or family or anybody who's bringing women down or saying these kinds of things to women, I actually have a fight with them. So maybe it's my passionate Mediterranean blood, and it's just to get them to stop doing that. Don't label your children. Don't label your daughters. Don't tell them that they can't do math. That's just all a pile of bunk, right? My daughter, when she was in grade 5, she had an English teacher that said she can't do English, and that was just stupid, right? This is a child boarding in Canada who is as smart as a whip who's doing a PhD now. So it's like, don't listen to these people, and as much as possible, if you see any of these injustices said about women or done to women, take the women aside privately and say, just don't listen to that, right? Mm-hmm. And that 5 minutes that you spend with that woman will probably help her for the rest of her life and will help her gain the confidence to know that whoever it was that said that bullcrap to her was full of it. So that would be my 2 cents there.
Beautiful. Well, I got $10 worth on that one, not 2 cents, Sue. Thank you so much. And Sarah, why is it important for women to know their worth and be able to negotiate and advocate for themselves?
Well, I echo a fair bit of what Dr. Sue said. I think that many of us as women, again, regardless of industry or skill set, are quick to give away our knowledge and our services for free and share our knowledge. I've voiced before in some of our ambassador meetings with the Universal Women's Network where I've been a part of, Women's Group X at Big Bank Y and, Chamber of, I won't say, anyway, all of these groups. And I think our time is valuable, and I'm not going to spend 3 or 4 hours once a week so I can share my knowledge and give it for free. I've earned my knowledge. Just because I can't put a price tag on it and what is it, a skid thing, whatever, scatter code, our knowledge is earned and our time is earned. So I do a lot of pro bono work, as I'm sure all of us do, in whatever capacity that is, and volunteering or mentoring, or a good handful of the litigation work I do for free because person X is truly in need and can't afford it. Fine, I do that. I do it purposefully and I do it intentionally. But if we don't value our work, the client doesn't either, right? Because it's a piece of advice I got from one of my, not a male colleague, it was a client and he saw my hourly rate. This was a few years ago, and it was on a big litigation file. And he told me that my hourly rate was too low. And I said, well, you know, my rate is this, and these are the reasons why, and my overhead's this. So I actually think that I'm putting, you know, the same dollars in my jeans as big partner X is at the firm. And he said, yeah, but it makes it look like you're Walmart instead of Holt Renfrew. So that was a good piece of advice. This was a sage old guy who's, you know, well retired and got brought out, but we need to value it. And sometimes it's just that if your rate is too low, depending on how you bill and what your fee structure is, one, yes, Sue, because you need to be making money. I think just about every company I walk into, I'm like, what are your margins? They're like, they're great. I'm like, really? Because it doesn't look like it to me. And if I do the math, and I'm really good at math, not looking so good, right? So you need to know, are you making money? Are you adding value, right? I'm not just going to charge so I can take a trip to Mexico, right? Like that is the antithesis of the type of business I want to do. I will add value. It'll be purposeful, and I'm worth it. And if I'm not worth it to you, find someone else, because I'm not going to compromise. So yes to the pro bono. No, I'm over giving away my knowledge for free. Like I don't mind, you know, everyone wants to talk to an accountant at a cocktail party and ask about RSPs. Again, not your girl. I haven't practiced tax and so forth. So yeah, add value, because if you don't value your knowledge and your work and your time, nobody else does. They're just going to keep taking.
Beautiful, Sarah. Thank you so much. Cara, why is it important for women to value their worth, what they bring to the table, and how to advocate for themselves?
No, so I love so much, again, I think this is part of going third, but what you guys have both said, and I think Sarah, to go to your point, I love that you said about knowing your worth. It comes down to those conversations, knowing what is out there and why, and people stepping up first. You said it was a male client, right, that had stepped up and kind of told you. And I think we don't often always know what is out there and what we're worth until these conversations happen. So first of all, I would definitely highly recommend that. But a story comes to mind when I think about this. So in Tim Hortons, I hire a lot of students. My restaurant is very student heavy. And I hire them at 15 years old, and I'm very fortunate. I usually keep them through high school and into their first years of college and university. And I have this girl. She went to school for graphic design and marketing, and she did some work for me. She actually created my logo for my Bimbo Tim Hortons restaurant. And it's beautiful. But after she had done it, after we had said everything was said and done, she sent, I obviously was paying her for work, but she sent me this email. She was like, well, just pay me what you think. And this is a young girl. And I was like, you know, so right away I was like, whoa, no, not okay. I was like, girl, like, come on. And like, own your worth, do your research, tell me exactly what you want to be paid for your time and energy that went into this. And it took her a couple of days, zero response. She definitely sat back and thought about it. But she came back and I got this beautiful little invoice. I'm pretty sure it was her first invoice that she had ever made. And I still would have paid her more, but that was what she asked. And it made sense. But I think in this place, in these situations, all we can do is teach and learn and give women, everyone, really the opportunity to step back and actually know their worth and own it and challenge it. So that's my little experience with it.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. And it's true, like you just have to pay it forward, but challenge that opportunity, right? And I think that's a great story, Cara. That's amazing, right? And that probably was her first invoice, but you now have raised the bar for her, so she will continue to learn and build on that. So if you hadn't taken that first step to do that for her, like that's such a valuable lesson. So that's what we should be doing, right?
It's funny because I went back to that situation heard that story and this situation often, and I see it come up, you know, in different scenarios, but with all of my team, and it's just a matter of empowering them to step up and to own it. There's a book that I read, not to promote anybody else's book, but Sally Project for Own It is incredible, and I think that gives a lot of knowledge and information about knowing your worth. So.
Beautiful. Well, I guess my next question for all of you is empowering. Let's talk about empowering our future leaders. I think, you know, we're talking about how you can sort of make, you know, build each other up, but let's talk about empowering our future leaders. What words of advice, Sue, would you share with our future leaders to help them on their journey?
So this is actually something near and dear to my heart. And I would say that even when I was an undergraduate in engineering, I've been going out and giving speeches for like a good, you know, 30, 40 years to kids as young as elementary school kids, right? And very often, and then high school kids, and then university kids, and then plenary sessions and entrepreneurs and so on. So, and very often, I will ask the audience questions to try and get a sense of what is it that they're after. And so what's interesting is when you ask kids, you go to an elementary school or a high school and you ask kids, well, what do you want to be? Typically it has to do something to do with the media, right? You know, you've got those kids that say, well, I want to be a billionaire. And then you've got other ones that say, well, I want to play hockey, you know, and then you've got other ones that say, I want to be a sportscaster. And so you start talking to them about, and rarely do they say, well, I want to be an entrepreneur or I want to be, you know, an accountant. Sometimes if their parents are in the finance industry, they'll say, well, I want to be a, you know, a CA like my dad or an accountant like my dad, or, you know, in the case of Tim Hortons, I want to run a franchise and so on. But if they don't have those models, right, and if they don't have those examples, right, they have to try and pull it out of the media. And so what they end up doing is giving you examples from the media itself that don't make sense. So you have to sort of walk them through it and say, okay, well, how are you going to do this? And you eventually you want to get them to the point where they're being practical in terms of what is it that they're trying to achieve. And very often I try and, you know, like when I was young, my parents gave me no choice in that, because there was a historian and an archaeologist for parents, and they were profs. They knew that everybody had to get educated, but they knew there were no jobs in history or archaeology. So they said, none of you are going into these fields, which is kind of unfair because they cut off a whole part of the arts world for us. And they said, you're all going to go into, well, first there was my mom, you're all going to be medical doctors. And then it was like, okay, well, you can be a scientist and so on. So they had very specific ideas, but you could get away with stuff like that back then. Now you can't tell kids stuff like that. You have to set examples for them. You have to motivate them, and as much as possible, bring them through and mentor them, and have them come and spend time in the companies. Like I've had, you know, students, high school students, university students, all sorts of students like that have spent time in our companies so that they can get a sense of what is it that we're working with. And it's funny because AI wasn't even known when I started doing AI, whereas now, because everybody knows what AI is, I do get unsolicited messages, unsolicited resumes, or people saying, I want to work in AI. And we did actually take one of these young women, and I am biased towards trying to give women more of a chance, and we brought her in, we interviewed her, and now we're training her to work in AI, because AI is really one of those fields that's really has has so few talent. We need so much talent in all of tech, right? So there's a lot of jobs out there that I think that we should be helping young women and men. Men tend to immediately, like their dads tell them, oh, you should be an engineer or this or that. Whereas the young women, they tend to sort of gravitate towards retail. And when you have something like a pandemic that we've just had, it's very difficult because they get so hurt by that. They have no jobs, and then what do they do? So from that perspective, I think as much as possible, I keep pushing STEM, so science, technology, engineering, and math. And even if they don't want to do that, there's finance, there's entrepreneurship. There's all sorts of things that people can do and young people can do to succeed. And I'm hoping to see a whole slew of entrepreneurs once this pandemic does its thing, because a lot of people will come out and they will want to start their own businesses. And they'll say, well, that's it. I'm going to put the power of what I earn in my hands, and I'm going to dedicate myself to making sure that's done. So as much as possible, this is what I think we need to mentor people by working with various groups that reach out to these people. We need to reach out ourselves and not to go out off on a pedestal. I've been active on public boards all my life, and active with these doing the speeches thing for all my life, and I think that has to continue. We have to keep inspiring these young generations that are coming, and it's getting harder because we're not TikTokers. We can't do a 2-minute dance to get them excited about what we do, but we have to make the effort to bring them into the fold. That would be my view on that.
Beautiful. And I think if I can add to that, which I think is underlying in everything, is that to empower them to ask for what they want, there's opportunities that exist.
Exactly.
And
everywhere.
Look for the STEM or industries that are underrepresented by women and go get it. There's lots of opportunities, but not necessarily is there awareness about those opportunities.
Yeah, and in STEM, this is what I tell young women. If you go into STEM, you stick out like a sore thumb. So one of the things that happens to me, and that's happened for decades, is if I go to the trade show or whatever, where I meet the customers, they always remember me. They always remember who I am. I, of course, get a little bit clueless because all I see is like C's and C's of suits. But eventually, I get better at keeping track of that. And there's things you can do with various contact managers and so on, to like tricks to add to improve your memory and remembering the sea of people that you meet that are not your gender. That's helpful, but that's really, I think, very important for young women, is that we are very underrepresented in these fields. There's tons of money to be made, tons of entrepreneurial opportunities, and they would have a job for life. That simple.
Beautiful. And Sarah, so I know that you're a mom of 2 really amazing young women, and I'd love for you to share with our listeners a little bit about your story. To your daughters, we're asking, hey, Mom, can boys do this? I'd love for you to share that story.
At the optometrist, yes.
Correct. I think that's really powerful. And then, so share a little bit about that story, because I've heard it before and it's so impactful. But then what words of advice would you have to empower our future leaders to help them on our journey?
Okay, so the story. So background, and part of, as a NEST recipient with the Universal Women's Network is a single mother trying to be successful in the world, whatever that world looks like. So we had left called a high conflict marriage. So I had a 2-year-old and 4-year-old, and I hadn't worked for a couple of years outside of the home, and found myself homeless, jobless, but I was educated. So I was a chartered accountant already, and we've talked about this before. I had all of these things in my favor. I spoke English, I was white, I had a resume, I had a university degree, I had a designation, et cetera, et cetera. So while it was uncomfortable and bumpy for me, it wasn't as devastating as it can be for many, many, many other women. So I'm hyper aware of that, which is the how and the why I direct most of my philanthropic and volunteer efforts. So as we were able to get back on our feet, and I was just barreling through the fact that I had thrown away my 30s and now I was going to be kicking ass in my 40s, my daughters have been surrounded by, my sisters. One of my sisters is a doctor, and my mom is a nurse, and I have an amazing father who was also successful, and my stepmother's a judge. So all of these powerful women, their karate coach is, I mentioned before, is the first female president of the World Karate Union in Canada. So there's all of these great, strong women. So because I intentionally, to the best of my ability, always source out female professionals, whether it's my doctor, my dentist, my lawyer, our optometrist. So we went for their first eye exam, kind of parenting fail, like what were they, like 7 and 9 or something? I'm pretty sure their eyes are good, but we're supposed to do this. So I, of course, booked an appointment with a female optometrist. So we get to our first appointment and the woman wasn't there. A man walked out and my younger daughter, who I'm guessing was about 7, maybe 8, looked at me and she's like, "It's a boy." I was like, "Noah," that's my daughter's name. I'm like, "Noah," I'm like, "men can be doctors too." And she's like, "What?" I'm like, "They can go to university. I know. Men are capable of this job. Let's give them a try." And she was like very concerned that this incompetent male was going to be the one doing the eye exam. So they've been raised and surrounded by strong, competent, successful women everywhere they look. So as I parent and we're choosing careers, and, you know, my kids are 11 and 13, and, you know, like, well, when I grow up, I want to live in Hawaii on this ocean. I was like, okay, well, how are you going to pay for that? I'm like, I support that goal, but now let's talk about earning potential and different careers and what you want to do. And so one daughter like wants to do X, and I said, okay, well, let's go on the university website and let's figure out what courses you need to take to get into that, and what courses do we need to focus on. And also what I ask them is, you know, I think I know, but what are your motivators? How do you see value? My older daughter, actually, just maybe it's an age thing, but she's just all about her. She's not much of a leader. Like, I put my 11-year-old in charge when I leave the house. I'm like, you're in charge, keep an eye on your sister, because, you know, my younger one is just, she doesn't have the yet academic fortitude. She's very, very smart, but that hasn't quite translated to work yet. But God, she's a workhorse, right? So she can accomplish anything. So I'm trying to focus in on what they're good at, what their skill set are, what motivates them, and what empowers them. So, you know, the younger one would be a great entrepreneur, and she'll be able to accomplish anything she wants because she works hard. The other one, things come easier, marks come easier, friends come easier, sports come easier. So she's just sort of coasting. I'm like, okay, well, the coasting part is going to come to a halt rather quickly, because at some point you're going to be surrounded by equals or superiors. So you're going to have to focus. So being an entrepreneur is great, but I'm, you know, part of why I'm an accountant is even at 20 years old, I was maybe negative enough to think, what can I do if I break my back? What can I do if I lose my legs? What could I? So I actually did the math in my head to think, can I do this job blind? Can I do this job deaf? Can I do this job in a wheelchair? I know this sounds wacky, but these are things that I ask my daughters. I'm like, yes, I think trades are amazing, but I'm like, what if my hand gets cut off? Can I still do it? Right? So I intentionally chose a career that I could, as it so happened, I needed to support me and mine on my own. Could I do it if I had some major disability? And so these are questions that I ask them to consider. I'm not saying that you can't be a chef, and I'm not saying that you can't be whatever, but these are things I'm asking them to consider. Where do they see value? Do they want to punch a clock and be an employee? That's okay, because there's roles for that. But what are you giving up and what are you gaining to do that? Because as an entrepreneur, all the risk, all the reward sits with you. So these are things that I suggest they consider. Long-term goals, ideal lifestyle, and their natural skill set. I would love them to be engineers. Maybe that's just not how their brain works, right? So yeah, that's the input I give them.
Beautiful. So many lessons within your leadership, and as part of you actually raising our future leaders. Sarah, I think you're doing a beautiful job, and they're so very lucky to have you championing for them, really. And so super excited to see where they kind of pivot to and grow. And of course, how amazing is it that they have all of these incredible leaders that are in your world, right? And even within the Woman of Inspiration, the Universal Women's Network, like the access to female role models, we didn't have that when I grew up, but whoa, I think just access to all the female leadership that we have now is super, super important to empower our youth. Anyways, I'm going to be quiet here. Cara, I'd love to hear from you how you believe that you can empower their future leaders to help them on their journey.
Mm-hmm. And I'm so sorry, it's so hard going after the two of you. I feel like everything you say is so incredible. I think that just empowering them really, I think back to representation. So growing up, the sports that I did, being in team sports was a very male-dominant world when I was growing up. And I never felt that I couldn't achieve anything that they could do. I was just always a part of that. But in sports, I played boys hockey, competitive boys hockey, full contact until I was 16 years old, until one day I was 100 pounds soaking wet and the boys were almost 200 pounds, full of muscle and full contact that kind of hurt a little bit. But I found that I always, boys hockey taught me that I always had a place at the table. And I think that this is probably actually in my book, or in my pages in the book. But judo taught me, and Sarah, I know that your daughters can relate to this so much, but judo taught me how to lose, but that there was always somebody who wanted it more than I do, who's training harder than who could, who was willing to do more to get there. And I think when I think of all of this, there weren't a lot of role models. There weren't a lot of people to look up to in those moments. So I really fall back on representation and just making sure that we have women in every industry, in every position, in every sport, really, that can pave the way, that can set girls up to be able to have a place where they can look and see someone who inspires them. And both of you, sorry, everyone, you guys all said something that resonated, and my mind keeps drifting away, so bear with me. I know that when I come to this, it's because you've all said something and I'm just like, oh my gosh, I haven't thought about that, or what you said is so truly incredible that you just have me drifting and dreaming. But I'm such a believer in representation and knowing that once you see somebody step into that path, you can follow it.
And you know what, I have to agree with you. When I've been listening to all of the panels, Women Driving Change panels, like if you can imagine my position as a moderator, how many different perspectives that I'm hearing, and I am so, I'm learning something every single conversation. And I think that's the beauty of it. We all bring so many things to the table, and our leaders have that knowledge at the fingertips. And this is so important. But I also want to touch on something that you said too, Cara, which was really important for our future leaders to know. And you said that when you were in these male-dominated industries, that there's always going to be somebody that is going to be willing to work harder, to be more prepared. And I think it's really important for our future leaders to have a work ethic, right? And really, when we have our peer-to-peer jam mentorship, peer-to-peer jam and role model talks, Sophia, who's 12, moderates that for me. And she does her homework. And what she said to me as a 12-year-old, she goes, I like to make sure that I'm well prepared. So anything can happen, and I know that I'll be able to do it. But I won't step into that role unless I know that I'm completely prepared. And I think that is really important. If we can teach anything to our young leaders, is just what you said, is, there's always going to be somebody that is going to be better than you or more prepared than you. But why can't you be more prepared, right? Why can't you set that bar really high? And so encouraging our leaders to do that is so important. So I think that's so much value there, right? Whether it's on the sports industry or whether it's in the education stream, it's really important to be prepared and be willing to work hard. It's not a free ticket. So thank you, ladies. So I want to wrap up with one final question. And this one I think hits home with all of us. It's work-life balance and kind of that question of, you know, your definition of success, number one. And do you think that we can have it all? Sue.
Yeah, good question. I was still thinking about the last question, and I was going to add one last tiny little thing. One of the things that we started doing in the first startup, because there was nobody in AI out there, was offering scholarships for kids that were in university at the time, maybe first year computer science. And we would pay them $5,000 a year to work for us in the summers, where we would pay them again, but also to study some AI courses. So one way to empower the youth of tomorrow, in my opinion, as entrepreneurs, is to offer scholarships, not necessarily just for STEM, but maybe in finance, maybe in leadership for, you know, the Tim's franchises or those kinds of things, just to get kids more away from the TikTok and more towards thinking what they're going to do in their future. So that's something that I think would be useful. Now, as far as work-life balance, I would say I was probably a mixture of very successful and a complete failure at it. So let's talk about how you could be successful. So one of the things that I do that I'm really religious about is swimming. So every second day I'll go and I'll swim a kilometer. I have to do that. If I don't, I just go cuckoo in the head. I also do try and walk. So physical fitness becomes part of my, it's like eating breakfast for me. If I can't do sports, I can't do these things, I can't clear my head. I try and get some isolation time. So, you know, a lot of people think I'm very extroverted, but I'm actually kind of a mixture of extrovert and introvert, because whenever I spend a lot of time with a lot of people, I find I have to come home and just like almost hide in a cave for, you know, the weekend or something like that, just get away from everything, right? And of course, when my children were young, you can't really do that. You know, it wasn't impressive to my son that we had no KD in the cupboard. He'd say, he didn't care that I was a CEO. Mom, there's no KD in the house. What's going on? It's like, oh my God, I failed at getting KD. Oh, end of the world. So I think you do the best you can. So if I have to advise other women and other future leaders, is you do the best you can, right? So I think you do need a profession. You need a job. You need a job that makes money. And my mother brought us up to all be very independent women, as well as guys. And I think her view was that you can't always rely on a guy being there to support you. And her view, even though like I've, you know, been married for you know, I say 60 years, but it's not true. But anyways, I make a joke of it. I think it's very important for women to be independent. And the lesson that we took from the Middle East when we immigrated to Canada, and that's from my parents, is if you have your education, nobody can take that away from you, right? If you have cars, if you have money, if you have palaces, if you have oil wells, all that stuff, it could all go as part of a war or whatever, right? Whereas your education, whatever's in your head, will always be there. And so it's extremely important for us to empower our youth, our children, future generations, other women, and it's never too late to go and get a degree. Like my, I won't say who exactly it is, but there was somebody in my family that went abroad and got married and got into a little bit of an abusive relationship. She came back and, you know, lived with us for a while, and I insisted that she do something. And so she went and she did a college degree, and it's carried her throughout her life now. And so it's important, I think, and the college degree wasn't very complicated. It was like 1 or 2 years of being an administrator or something like that. So you can make money to support yourself. That's the goal, right? So I think it's important. Work-life balance, let's not be too hard on ourselves. We need it. It's ideal. We cannot always achieve it, but we can do bits of it. We can, plant some flowers and talk to our flowers and water them. We can go swimming. We can play judo. We can do karate. We can do all these things that will help us, and we can do it as a family with our kids so that we try and do more together. So that would be my 2 cents on that, is that, I've been good at it and I've been very bad at it. So I've learned that I can't be too hard on myself about it. That would be my lesson.
Giving every woman permission is what you just did, Sue. So thank you for sharing, because when we look at successful leaders, we're like, she has it all. And I think it's real to say, sometimes we drop a couple balls and it's not as graceful as it looks.
All the eggs get cracked and you have to go and buy more eggs, right? So and now what I tell people is that, people that make mistakes at the bank, or, when I'm ordering my tea or my coffee and they don't put milk in it, or they put milk in it when I don't want milk and all that sort of stuff, I just tell them it's a pandemic. It's okay. You can make mistakes. Like, don't worry about it. This is not a big deal. Just, moving on. So I think we just have to learn to forgive ourselves and be kinder to ourselves, because, being hard and really pushing and keeping this stress going on, this is what's generating a lot of the panic attacks in our young generations. Is they're putting so much stress on themselves about everything, their careers, their boyfriends or girlfriends, everything. And so we need to teach them how to take a step back, do some deep breaths, and not expect everything to be 100% perfection, because, it's impossible.
And Miss Sarah, so how do you define success, and do you think that we can have it all?
I think we can have it all. We may not have it all at once. There's lots of talk, and it seems to be a question that's only asked to women. How do you balance it all? And that's annoying, because no one's asking fathers how they're like fathering. But in any event, success to me, it can be twofold, but work-wise, my litmus test, right? If I won, $100 million today, what would I be doing? You know what I'd be doing? I'd be doing exactly what I'm doing. I would just outsource some more help. I'd get my little vegan chef, and I would have a housekeeper every day. But my day-to-day life, I love the work that I'm doing. I see value in the work that I'm doing, and that wouldn't change. So to me, certainly from a career perspective and really just a day-to-day living perspective, that's success. Am I being the best version of myself that I'm capable of being and still looking to learn and improve? I think I am. So that ties into the balance in the sense that I think lots of people think that I do a lot and I probably never sleep and I don't get as much sleep as I need. So there's, one of my fails, one of my many fails. But I structure my days. My days are full. And part of me finding balance, which includes mothering, is, am I taking care of myself? And not, going to the spa, which would be nice, but am I being the best that I can be? Am I doing the best I can do at my job? Am I keeping myself healthy? And am I being an example to my daughters? So I get up really early and I meditate and I have a coffee and I run. And that is how I reset my day and I organize my day. And I'm really not doing it for fitness. I don't care about my time. Well, maybe I do. But, I'm part of my work-life balance is trying to ensure that I tick every box. And maybe the accountant in me and the linear thinker in me is it's in my calendar. Obviously, my wake up around meditation isn't in my calendar, but everything is scheduled. So, my fitness during the day, it's blocked off. It doesn't get interrupted unless I'm in court or something and I don't have control. So the balance is sometimes, maybe I'll go a couple stretches of working 7 days a week and working late at night because I have a case or a project or something. And maybe part of it's being a single mom as well, but I told my daughters from the time that they were little, like, this is a team effort, kids. You know, my job is to do great at my work and to support us and keep this roof over your head and to buy your new shoes when you need it. And your role is to be part of this family unit. They're not very helpful in cleaning. I'm able to, you know, I outsource what I can. I have a nanny. I recognize that's a luxury, but I structure my life around being able to afford a nanny, being able to afford, you know, Whole Foods and all of these things. So you give up in one area and in order to supplement the other. And that's part of the work-life balance, is that instead of looking at it, do my days or my weeks line up in perfect balance? No, but hopefully my month does, or maybe my year does. You kind of look at it in the grander scheme. Have I achieved and satisfied my needs and the people that I care for's needs? And that includes my clients and my business partner. And everyone's just doing their best. So have grace and recognize that we're not going to check all the boxes every day, but hopefully if we stay aligned in our actions and our values, if you keep that aligned, then it should smooth out. That's the hope.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Sarah. And Cara, do you think that we can have it all? And what is your definition of success?
Okay, first of all, I'm still giggling. Sarah, I have to call you out on not caring about your time, because obviously I follow you on social media, and I think it's hilarious because I think we all say, yeah, I don't care about that, but we really do. So I'm just a little bit, right? I'm still giggling, and I find that pretty funny. But in terms of success, do I think we can have it all? Yes, absolutely. And again, mimicking both of you ladies, or all of you ladies, I think that we can have it all, but not necessarily at the same time. I invested in a leadership coach many years ago, and probably the best investment that I've ever made, because I was not that person that could balance my work life. I couldn't do it. I worked my ass off, and I'm so sorry to say that, but I worked my ass off, and I just found that it never seemed to be enough. I was always struggling. I was always falling short. So it took her, I'm going to say, a good part of 5 years to get me into a routine where I celebrate those wins and I celebrate those successes. And I really, truly, so now I'm very much a work hard, play hard kind of girl. I think that I enjoy my wine. I love to go, have that time separate from work, but it is very challenging and it's very hard. So my point of all of this is that I think it is so important to make sure that we make those concessions and that we slow down and we honor ourselves. And whether it's meditation or running, obviously Sarah, and actually everyone, I think that I said this even in one of the questions, the Q&A in my book, but I say my book, your book, our book. I've always struggled with a good morning routine because I think being in the coffee industry, we cater to everyone else's morning routine before our own. And it is, and I really struggle with that because I think a morning routine is so important. And I think that in a perfect world, I would love to get up to meditate, whatever meditation looks like to you, but to take the time back. I love the gratitude, right? You write down your 3 things that you're grateful for and your 3 intentions for the day, and do that with my run. But I don't often get that opportunity because in coffee, we're there first, right? We're looking after everyone else. But I think that it's really important if you can't do maybe the things that you want to, you fall back and find somewhere else where it makes sense. So with my coach, with everything that we've worked on, I find that I take myself on a lot of dates. I love to go to a restaurant with my book. And I almost do this weekly, to be totally honest. And I dress up, I probably will do that tonight. So I get dressed up, I put on my lipstick, I have my high heels on, and I go to one of my favorite restaurants, I take my book, I order a glass of wine, and then just enjoy it. or if it's the spa, whatever it is that you appreciate and you do, if it's a hike or travel, you know, but I'm a huge believer that you can have it all. You just have to make time for the important things, but we tend to burn ourselves out. I think as women specifically, and especially, we tend to burn ourselves out. We run ourselves ragged before we realize that we do need that extra time. So I'm a huge advocate for that, for making sure that we step back, that we honor ourselves, and whatever it is. You know, I love to put on, I'm an extrovert completely, totally. I love to get dressed up. This is one of my favorite things, clearly. I find there's something powerful about putting on some good lipstick, but, you know, honor that, and whatever it looks like for you, but take a step back and make sure that you do it, and work it into your routine. So whether it's adding it to your calendar and making sure, treating it like a meeting, treating it like an appointment that you would have to go to, I think you should treat yourself the same way.
Beautiful. So I have got to say, every single one of you has a different definition of success and what it means to having it all. And I think that is the biggest message for all women. Having it all is going to be different for every single person. And I loved what you said, Cara, about, you know, like my routine it's taken me 5 years to get into that. And so there's such a permission for other women, myself included. I'm busy. A cup of coffee is a daily routine for me, right? Kissing my dog is a daily routine. How I get things done in the order that it gets done every day is sometimes a little bit different. But I think it's okay that we all have that flex, and that we are not holding ourselves to what she's doing or what she's doing or what she's doing, but really just owning what feels good to us, and knowing that tomorrow's a new day and we can start anything we shall choose, right? So I'm super excited. I'm really, really honored to have each of you share so much wisdom with us and be so deeply committed to driving change and raising the bar for all women. And I look forward to the journey ahead, because I really do believe now more than ever we need to do this. We're in the decade for women driving change, but it's going to happen when we have action takers and leaders like yourself that are willing not just to talk about it, but do it. So thank you so much for being a driving change, and super excited about the book. If anybody's listening and wants to learn more about your stories, we've got all of these beautiful stories, and I'm so honored to be on this whole journey with you all. So thank you so much for being a part of our panel today, Dr. Sue, Sarah, and Cara.
Thank you, Monica. That's awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye, everyone.